We're here with Eric Rhodes, aka Second Realm, to talk about CryptoPunks and copyright laws around CryptoPunks with the advent of Cryptopunks with a PH. We're going to talk about Visa purchasing a CryptoPunk NFT, as well as Justin Sun buying some really expensive digital rocks. So we're going to unpack all of that. People have been spending over $500,000 on rocks. So let's get into it. Eric Rhodes, Second Realm.
Hello, thank you, Chango, for having me. We've got quite a few things to talk about. I'm excited to talk about them.
The theme of this episode is going to be all around NFTs, the current craze and enthusiasm around that.
Sure.
And why they're so expensive.
Yeah, I think the overall reason they're so expensive, some of what's happening is people are buying older projects that existed on chain prior to, in the case of Ether Rocks, prior to ERC 71 standard token.
721.
What I say,
The
71? Yeah, ERC 721. Prior to that, so what's happening is people are now digging up all these old projects, like I think Ether Waifu is one of them. There's like so many now. And
the Ether Waifu?
I think that's the name of it. I don't know. I just learned about it yesterday or today, so it's definitely Waifu. I don't remember what but they're going for crazy amounts. So what's happening is people are picking these up because of the historical context. Chain, where people are now interested in projects that happened before punks, with punks, and after, or the big boom.
Sharing my screen. So this is the Ether Waifu.
Yes.
Ether what?
Yeah.
Ether Waifu is a game released in March 2018 where you collect craftable artworks. Each artwork has thousands of unique variations, and you can craft a new one by combining traits of other artworks you own. It is tradable as an NFT on Ethereum. So we have the traditional image of an anime girl, and these are waifus.
What's crazy about this is it was just discovered or rediscovered by, I think his name is Adam McBride. I don't, this, it's escaping me right now, but so he discovered them, and then people realized there was still more to mint as of like 2 days ago. And so they did, and then they wrapped them into ERC 721s, and now you could buy them on OpenSea, and they're like ridiculously, the floor is, last I checked, was like 3 or 4 or 5, I think, ETH.
That's a substantial amount of
curveball. I threw a curveball at
you. Yeah, this is more than any waifu has ever sold in the past. I mean, what did people who sold waifus in the past make? The waifu pillows, right?
I don't even know, to be perfectly honest with you. Maybe.
And so now they've gone digital, and they're even less real than a pillow. Well, who's to say what's real and what's not? Right.
Yeah, I think in this case, people aren't picking them up for the same reasons. I think this goes back to historical context. 20 years down the road, when we look at what projects were being minted and created, these are now not lost to time because of the blockchain, which is really interesting because people can go back and dig it up, and it's all available right there for us. It's one of the beauties of the technology, right? Maybe some of the earlier artistic movements were lost to time because there was no way to find and connect and collect them by looking through a history. They're sort of just lost, right? And here they're not getting lost, they're getting rediscovered, which is kind of beautiful. So in this case, I think most people are picking them up for historical context because their value is they were near first on chain.
The fact that they were earlier on minted on the blockchain, and that they're older than any NFT currently being minted, that's what gives them this time value.
Absolutely. Yeah. Same thing with Mooncats. Same thing with Ether Rocks. Same thing with, I would say same thing with CryptoPunks, but they've got culture behind them. There's a different aesthetic there. But yeah.
That's a good segue into Ether Rocks
Mhm.
and CryptoPunks. So, can you give us a backstory about that? Because some of us don't really know it, including myself.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Ether Rocks, another project that was rediscovered basically, and they were, I believe, what I wrote it down here, June 2017 was when CryptoPunks was minted on chain, and then December 2017 is when Ether Rocks was minted on chain. So like 6 months later. I believe both were before the ERC 721 token, if I remember correctly. And so with Ether Rocks, it's historical value there, the same thing. And what's happening is we're seeing influencers like Justin Sun, we're seeing and billionaires and millionaires come in and want these for not only historical value but clout, to be able to say, look at me, look what I could buy. I have, I could buy the rarest of the oldest kinds of Ethereum tokens out there.
Interesting. So that's what gives them inherent value. It's not that there's some digital rocks as we're seeing, right? Where the artistic value of these rocks isn't really a factor when it comes to how these
No,
things are valued.
no,
Yeah.
the art, yeah, no, there's no,
Behold, the
maybe
Ether
some
Rock.
people are buying them for the artistic value. I can't say no definitively, but my experience is telling me this is about clout and access and showing that you can own a piece of um, Ethereum history, Ethereum NFT history.
I see.
Yeah.
So this brown Ether Rock that doesn't look
It's very,
significant
very beautiful.
anyway. Indeed. Sarcasm.
Mm-hmm.
This went for $1.3 million.
Yeah.
And that's just incredible.
Think about, so one of the things that I'm often frustrated with purchases like this is artists came into the space after a lot of these projects flopped, right? And after ERC 721 was created, and we saw platforms like OpenSea and Super Rare and Blockchain Art Exchange, all these places give a way for artists to make their product and easily upload it in a very UI friendlier way than having to create your own contract, as these would have had to have done prior to ERC 720. What's frustrating for me is we see all these millionaires coming in, or people with money coming in, buying these things for clout, and yet there are artists struggling every day who, if you just spent 10% of that on a new artist's artwork, it might feed them for a month, or 1%. Anyway, I just, diverted a little bit, but I would love to see that more. But I understand why people are coming in and they're saying, look, I can own this piece of internet history. And then, 20, 30, 40 years down the road, when somebody looks at Sun's wallet, they'll say, hey, look, he's got punks, he's got this, he's got that. He was there in the early days, even though he
Right. So
bought his own clout.
that's what it really is all about.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, hey, I'm an OG as of 2014. This is the proof.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't think I'm wrong in saying that. I think Gary Vee would agree with me. He's mentioned this many times, even on my own podcast. Punks are about clout.
Yeah.
You're seeing famous people come in and they're buying them because they could show them off in their profile pictures. Because a guy like Beanie, who comes in, Beanie Maxi is an influencer, comes in, buys 7 punks, all of a sudden he's a rock star because he could buy 7 punks, right? So he buys clout, he buys access. That's another thing you buy with these NFTs, is access to exclusive communities. So yeah, and I don't see nothing wrong with that. It's great for the original creators of the projects who pioneered the space to now begin to see some fruits of their, from their labor, almost 4 years ago. I love that.
Yeah,
From their
definitely.
perspective.
What do you think determines how the value converges on a certain type of NFT versus converging behind a starving artist who hasn't been discovered yet?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't think that there's one single answer, but what I'll say is that most most of the value converges behind these older projects for two reasons. One, people with influence want clout, and so they're driven as a cohort to buy these, and then that drives their value up even more. Think about Ferocious, Victor, right? Victor came in after me. I've been an artist in the space since early 2019. Victor came in after me, but caught fire. He made really beautiful imagery, and people were coming up behind him and converging on his aesthetic, converging on his story. It's that convergence. It's of the convergence of people who are interested in that particular artist, who have clout, then drive, or who have influence, then drive additional influence and money to the artist. So for some it happens slowly over time. I think that's happening to me. I'm seeing for myself, my unofficial punks are now, the floor is at 1 ETH. It used to not be there. See,
Congratulations. I'm
thank
happy
you.
for you.
Yeah, it's 2 years coming, but what I love about it is artist royalties, right? They're in the secondary market now, but because I've been around and seen so much, I have a story now. I was a pioneer in crypto art. I was a pioneer in trash art. I am a pioneer in the alt punks. That developing story has helped drive value and influence to my own art, and I've continued to stay in the space, and I continue to tell a story. Part of what's interesting about these older projects is the story that gets told, right? Or the story you can tell about buying it. Punks, right? Punks and curio cards, two of the projects that really helped drive ERC 721 standard. They have historical value, and there's but beyond that, there's a collectability aspect, and we're seeing interest in that, in all of that. And I think it's great for the space. As much as I want more artists to become more successful, I'd rather have more artists become more successful. I think these kinds of stories help drive interest in the space, because the mainstream media is going to see Justin Sun just spent $500,000 on a rock, right? Like that's mind-blowing to some people. Well, that drives interest, and that it'll get people to dive into it, potentially. But
Right. I've watched the Basquiat movie, and that's basically the extent to which I understand the art world. So, I've tried to look at art and NFTs and apply an objective lens to it and try to parameterize certain aspects of it, right? Like, okay,
yeah,
the scarcity value, the time value of, I guess, their age, the subjective value of the story behind the artist who produces the artwork. But it's it's almost impossible to do because it's such a subjective thing. And whether or not an artist or project goes viral is kind of, it's also seems arbitrary from the outside,
yeah.
but from what you explained, it makes sense.
It's owning or buying or participating in the art experience is highly emotional. What gets, I think, uh, that gets veiled here a bit, because the term like crypto is attached to art, or NFTs are highly connected to the crypto space, and we're talking about buying things with crypto, and there's a tendency to apply like tokenomics to NFTs, and I don't think that that is directly applicable,
Right.
because of the emotional relationship you have to buying these artworks. Look at Bored Apes, right? I passed up Bored Apes because I was not connected to the project. I was focusing on my own projects. I could have bought a dozen of them really cheap, right? Now they're selling, I think the floor is like 30 ETH. So we're talking about $90,000 for one JPEG. That's mind-blowing. But it was driven by a community of people who believed in the project, and a community of people who loved the community, right? Who loved the culture that was being created. So there is a deep emotional connection. And yeah, we're purchasing these things with Ethereum, but it is not driven by the same tokenomics. The only thing that I could say definitively is that when there are peaks and valleys in the Ethereum price, steep peaks or steep valleys, you'll see a pause in almost all of the NFT market except for blue chip products. But I don't think you can apply typical tokenomics to purchasing NFT collectibles.
So somebody who has a more logical mind is like myself definitely would not understand this.
Yeah, I tend to be I have a logical mind myself, so that's why I miss so much. Right.
Right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
You know, and I'm an artist, right? So I'm like this. I'm also not here. I'm here to like sell my own stuff mostly. And I collect as being a part of the community. And I tell the story of the community because that's how me writing is helping me to understand what's happening in the space as well. And then I love sharing it with everybody. But yeah, the logic mind, if you, yeah, I almost have to step into marketing brain to really understand why a potential project is blowing up. And it's really simple when you for me when I look at the unearthing of all of these ancient, well, quotes, projects from, you know, pre ERC 721 days, it's the emotional aspect is clout, you know, and ownership of something that existed before punks, before or during punks, or if we're talking about Pepe's, right? Pepe's were 2016 on technically not on the Bitcoin blockchain, but you know, tangentially associated with the Bitcoin. And so like these, it's surprising to me that people haven't gone so far back as to blow that up yet. I think just right now people are really enamored with what's happening in the Ethereum market, and so they're staying on the Ethereum chain.
Yeah, that's right. What I find interesting is that people are ascribing value to this being on Ether instead of on Bitcoin. But I could kind of extrapolate why that is, because we could connect the dots between what's happening with minor extractable value and how any amount of block space is sort of that value that is to be expected. So given that these historical artifacts on Ethereum is inherently valuable because there's a time attached to it, that's probably what's also tangentially driving the value of NFTs on Ethereum,
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
because that block space is so valuable right now and it's
Mhm.
becoming ever more scarce. So that's, yeah, that this is really interesting to me because people are ascribing value to Bitcoin because the coin itself is scarce. But on Ethereum, the block space is scarce.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm on this article right now. We're looking at the top NFTs that have increased in value. So CryptoPunks saw it. So reading this article, it has been an incredible rise for CryptoPunks, one of the original NFTs and the ones that those who don't like NFTs make the most fun of. So
Right.
CryptoPunks has increased by 650%, 15%. 6 months ago, the floor for CryptoPunk was 34.7 thousand. Today, it's over six figures, 248K.
Mhm.
VeeFriends, Gary V's project, has gone 1,000% plus. Gary V's VeeFriends launch was delayed for a while, but when it launched in the first week of May, his cartoonish drawings were a hit. Not
Mhm.
only for the drawings, but the fact that the NFT came with benefits, such as NFT holder having the right to attend a conference and other perks. Oh, that's nice. A consistent cougar bought 3 months ago for 2280 was sold for 26K. Well, a gift goat that cost 20K 3 months ago sold for 65K. Substantial. Okay, Bored Ape, as you mentioned. Bored Ape has by far the highest increase in price. So if you had bought Bored Ape back then, you would have just tremendously profited. Bored Apes launched on April 23rd and took off the following week. So that's what, of this year?
Yes.
A person could have easily gone in for $500, and today the cheapest Bored Ape is around $100,000.
Mind-blowing stuff right there.
For the earliest buyers now selling, returns are between 17 to 20,000%. 17,000 to 20,000%. And that's a little more than 100 days. So, okay, Bored Ape kind of contradicts the time value thesis. Why did this one take off so fast?
So all three of these, even VFriends would contradict your time value thesis. It's about the utility, right? The utility of CryptoPunks was community. Now it's clout, right? It was showing that you were early in the space. Now it's about owning a piece of history. The utility for VFriends is everything you get access to being part of Gary V's community. So I owned a VFriends. I bought it for half an Ethereum and I sold it for $15,000, right?
Nice.
That's like I think that was, I don't know, 7, 8, 9x for me at the time. That's incredible value for me, right?
That is.
Somebody who reinvests my earnings back into my artwork. It's good for me. But the utility there, why people are buying it, is you get 3 years access to VCon, which is his huge conference that's going to start in 2022. Additional cards that you could purchase also have one-on-one experiences with Gary V, or you go bowling with Gary V, or you get to talk to him about your business. You get consultation with Gary V, right? These things are inherently valuable because of who Gary V is, right? So he wouldn't sell. If it was me selling this, I wouldn't have nearly made I wouldn't be able to resell that stuff. It's not about the art that's on the page. He hand drew all of them, and that's great. But the value that's built into the V project, the VFriends project, is the utility, what you can do and what you get access to. Similarly, though the utility is different for Bored Apes, it's similar in that the reason they're so valuable is, well, there's 3 reasons that Bored Apes are really valuable. One, they are like the grandfather of the modern day PFP 10K project drop. So everything that's dropped after Bored Apes has been modeled after how Bored Apes did it. So there's historical value there. The other piece is,
can you go back to what a PFP drop is?
Sure, yeah. A profile picture project. It's just a way to identify, like, technically, I would say CryptoPunks is a profile picture project. Bored Apes is a profile picture project. Any projects that you'd be proud to put in your Twitter or other profile avatars.
But what's preventing someone from just taking a screenshot of the picture and then uploading it as their profile picture without having actually bought it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, nothing is preventing them from doing it. But then if you're in the space, and then somebody could just as easily check your wallet, and then you'll be held accountable for putting up a picture you don't own, right? If the intent is to show clout, and then if somebody comes in who
doesn't necessarily want to show clout, but just demonstrate that they can do it. But everyone else who sees the clout value of these profile pics are going to verify and say, okay, that's just a joke.
And the other piece is too, you get access to community. So if you're on Discord and you're a punk owner, a punk owner, you could verify that you're a punk owner. You get access to private rooms. Or a Bored Ape, you get access to private community on their Discord. So there are layers to this utility of owning, and it happens for a lot of these 10K profile picture projects.
Mm-hmm.
I believe also World of Women, same thing. They're blowing up right now. I think the floor is about 2 ETH.
World of Women.
Yeah, one of the few female centric projects out there, but they are really, the illustrations are beautiful. You can't really make fun of them in the way that people made fun of punks, but the floor
Because
here,
they
well,
are not 8-bit.
well, I think most people just make fun of them because they are like, you're buying it, 8-bit JPEGs, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just pixels. This case, it looks like really beautiful. Well, they are really beautifully illustrated by one
Yeah, my
artist.
gosh,
Yeah.
all of these women are something I aspire to. Like some of their hair and their
I know.
makeup.
Yeah, yeah. I had 3, and I ended up selling 2 and keeping 1.
Okay. Yeah, this is beautiful.
Yeah, highly recommend. Like, if you want to get into, if you're looking to get into a project and you think you missed out on, you can't afford a punk and you can't afford an ape, this would be, and this is not investment advice, but if you're going to get interested in something, this would be an awesome project to do it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So are you saying that this is the next Bored Ape?
No, I'm not
Potentially?
saying, I don't know. I don't want to make that call. But I believe in the project. So I will be holding on to my one and only for quite some time, because I think it aspires to be similar,
Mm-hmm.
and the community is driving that way. What's really interesting about World of Women is they also share, if you were lucky enough, or you could buy into certain NFTs that they have, that have traits, specific traits, you can share in the profits of the secondary market. So, and there's 3 layers to it. But I think that they're unique in that way. They're doing something a little bit different than others, because as a collector, you can share in the growth of the project by getting a percentage of the secondary market sales. You get royalties, right? So when I think that there's like 10% royalty or something overall on the whole contract, and then a certain percentage of that goes to those who have a specific PFP that has like specific traits, and then when you own that, you can earn a percentage of the secondary market royalties, which I think is like totally cool.
So do we know what specific traits qualify for that?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, it's I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's all available on the World of
Okay.
Women website. I believe it's the trait where it's the pearl earrings and a necklace, but I could be wrong.
Pearl earring and necklace. Just imagine if in real life you, by the very fact that you have some pearl earrings, you get to take part in shareholder dividends or something.
Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be
Right. Yeah, well, that's like, that's another, when we talk about utility, right? These are the kinds of things that people are experimenting with. Like when it's not just, you're not just buying a JPEG. Sure, you could right click and save as, but you can never participate in these kinds of unique utilities that other projects are really trying to and pushing the boundaries on. Access to community, in this case, profit sharing, or maybe it's DAO related, like Punk Comics, right? Beanie Maxi's project. There's a
Sorry, what's
whole
that? What's a Beanie Maxi project?
Beanie Maxi is a influencer. He went and bought, I think it was 7 or 8 or 9 punks, and then he created a comic. It's called Punk's Comic, and then through that, he has developed an entire system of like value built into the Punk's Comic. So if you own the Punk's Comic, you get dropped other NFTs, or you get access to other projects, or in the case of the DAO, you could burn that Punk Comic, and then you would get a DAO token, and now you are an owner and a participant in the ownership of the DAO profits. So really interesting stuff that's happening. Some of it is beyond me in terms of like technical capability, but I do own a Punks comic because I do believe that it is going to be a project that will be around for a long time.
Part of this whole movement is part about the art, part about the utility, but part about the clout. What do you think ultimately is driving this NFT summer, so to speak, on Ethereum?
Clout.
Clout. Yeah, that's probably the biggest motivator.
Yeah, and when you think about, let's talk about Visa, right? Because one of the things with
Uh-huh.
CryptoPunks, yeah, the interesting thing there is, sure, it could seem like it's being bought for clout, but think about how much free press they got by spending only 150,000 to basically introduce their NFT platform, right? Or NFT, uh, whatever they're going to do in NFTs, right? So instead of doing a multi-million-dollar marketing campaign, they went direct to their audience, their target audience, spent $150,000 on an ape, on a punk, and got tons of free press, tons of people tons of people trolling on them, tons of people rejoicing them, tons of people talking about them, all just from buying a punk. It's a smart move.
It is smart on Visa's front, and it would have been smart on the CryptoPunks team front if they were actually doing this deliberately. But I think this was more organic, right?
I don't think that, I can't say that CryptoPunks team wasn't involved, but it doesn't seem like it.
If I were working on an NFT project, for us to take this to the big leagues and get Visa to buy one of our punks for 150K, that would be a huge win. But from your perspective, it was about Visa getting a huge win because they've only spent 150K on basically a
Sure.
marketing exercise. Yeah.
Smart move, right? They'll never, I don't think they'll ever admit to it being a marketing exercise. I think that they called it an investment or investing in the technology. But I immediately saw it for what it was, and I was like, that's same thing with Arizona iced tea. They went and bought a Bored Ape. That's absolutely genius for brands to do, because you're going to get tons of people talking about you. The difference, I think, between Arizona and Visa is that Visa can turn around and now actually do something from a platform perspective, I think, in terms of NFTs that Arizona iced tea maybe can't, right? Because they're a financial platform. They could do credit card onboarding immediately. Like I think there's a whole much bigger avenue for Visa to explore here than Arizona. But I don't know any of the people behind these brands, so I'm just totally speculating there.
Arizona Iced Tea's Bored Ape NFT brand use was, quote, inappropriate, creators warn. Visa isn't the only brand buying NFTs. Still, the Bored Ape creators tell Decrypt that Arizona Iced Tea went too far in using its branding.
Yeah, I actually don't know what they did to use their branding, but one of the big differences between Bored Ape and owning a Bored Ape and owning a CryptoPunk is the license you have. And it's the full commercial license. So the owners of this is the other utility, right? Another utility facet. When you buy a Bored Ape, you become the full copyright owner to that ape's IP. 100% full stop. Boom. Right? That's not the same for CryptoPunks. With CryptoPunks, it's believed, now I've done a little bit of research on this. So there in the past, there's been 2 licenses that CryptoPunk ownership Larva Labs has said that the CryptoPunks are under. In one of those licenses, it's not very clear if there are commercial rights, and in the other, there are commercial rights, but only up to 100,000 a year, which is significantly different utility-wise. What you can do with the Bored Ape versus what you can do with a CryptoPunk, and I believe the CryptoPunk license also dictates that it's only for merchandising use only. So basically selling selling t-shirts, hats, bags of your Bored Ape, not being able to brand, I mean, of your CryptoPunk. With a Bored Ape, you could brand a product with your Bored Ape. Same thing with
So,
avatars. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
no, I'm sorry I cut you off, but I was just wondering what was the controversy behind creators warning that Arizona Iced Tea inappropriately used the Bored Ape brand, even though they technically own the IP now.
Yeah, I'd have to dig into it. I wasn't aware of that. So this is the first time I learned that there was controversy. But I don't think that the creators could do much about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not a lawyer, so I'd have to, you know, there may be some, if it's hurting their brand image, if they own, it could be that they used, you know, BABC or, you know, the Bored Ape Yacht Club branding itself, which I think is which I know you're not supposed to do, but you can use the ape. So it's like really, it's very clear you could use your ape for third party products, but you can't like say Bored Ape Yacht Club. Yeah, so I'm just going to take a guess without knowing what the actual controversy is, but even though you own the full commercial copyright to the ape image, you don't own any of the IP rights to the name Bored Ape Yacht Club. So if they use Bored Ape Yacht Club or any of the branding or any of the trademarked imagery related to the brand in context with their ape, they could potentially run into some legal issues there.
Got it. And that lets us segue into the original topic that I wanted to bring you on to talk about, which is the CryptoPunks versus CryptoFunks copyright controversy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so CryptoPunks here is deployed by the Larva Labs, but there was a CryptoFunk with a PH who just basically took the pixelated artwork, mirrored it, and then sold those as funks. So
Yeah.
I want to talk about the copyright infringement and subsequent cease and desist that they issued to the CryptoFunks. And I also want to talk about the underlying ideology behind decentralization. There's a conflict there, right, with what's typically done in the traditional world, which is, you know, defend copyrights or trademarks and patents, and that conflicts with the ideology that things should be decentralized and free. So yeah, where do you sit on that spectrum? What do you think?
Yeah.
First of all,
well, let me own my bias here first so that people know where I'm coming from. um, I believe copyright, trademark, and IP laws should be abolished personally. But when I wrote this article, it was through it, I tried not to be hyperbolic about that. I tried not to be biased about my representation of what was happening, because it was more of a journalistic effort instead of a editorialization that I was trying to go after with this article. But I want to be clear to people that that is my bias, so that, you know, if they learn later that that's the case, then you know where I'm coming from. But where do I sit on this? I've always thought the concept of decentralization was kind of utopian in nature. I always felt like we were going to work hand in hand with centralized authority, centralized regulation, um, and while I don't never while I believed in the utopia, I didn't believe that that was actually going to happen. There's just too much money at stake and too many people who currently have influence to allow us to go to full decentralization, even with abolishing copyrights and IP laws. Right? Copyright is um, it's mostly about corporate protectionism, like the Disney law, right? Well, the quote unquote Disney law, with the extension of the Mickey Mouse copyrights over and over and over again. We'll see another extension in 2 years. It's going to happen. So these things exist and they're not going to go away. I think we need to learn to live in that world, but by knowing how to live in that world, we can push boundaries, right? So that's one of the reasons that I'm an appropriation artist, and I regularly do things to push boundaries. Like I have art out there and I'm waiting for Disney to come at me. And when they do, I'm going to tokenize every piece of documentation as part of the project, you know.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I'll make it completely public. But the more I say that, the more I think that they're not going to do it now, because they probably wouldn't want that to happen, or I'm not big enough. But let's go back to CryptoPunks and CryptoFunks.
Well, maybe that might be the thing that does get you big because you're a controversial artist.
Potentially, yeah. I am.
Yeah.
I do tend to be controversial and push boundaries, getting kicked off platforms. You know, it's fun that way.
Fun, totally. Yeah, controversy is where the rebels revel in.
Absolutely. With all of that laid out, when we think about what was happening with CryptoPunks and CryptoFunks, CryptoFunks basically, as you correctly said, they mirrored it, but then they added an additional feature of adding that purple border, and a color border was to indicate a certain level of rarity. So there's a yellow border, there's a red border, there's also a gray border for the least rare pieces, and maybe even a green border, if I remember.
Is the purple border the rarest?
I think it is, yes. Yeah, because that has
this is what I have purple hair.
Yeah. Purple is the unicorn, right?
It's the color of royalty. Yeah, that's right.
The question becomes, is the flip and the addition of the border a significant enough transformation away from, and a parody away from the original IP, that it doesn't violate copyright? Now, that typically would be adjudicated in the courts. What happened here instead was 2 times OpenSea delisted them for internal reasons that I don't believe that they ever clearly laid out. But I think Nate Chastain, who is the head of product, later said it was his decision to pull it the first time. Then it went to Trust and Safety. So Trust and Safety is a team inside of OpenSea that determines whether or not a controversial product is safe to put on the platform. They said yes, right? So then it went back up. The third time it got delisted was because now Larva Labs, CryptoPunks by this point had received a lot of notoriety and a lot of awareness. And CryptoPunks, Larva Labs came in and dropped a DMCA on them. This is where it gets a little bit gray because information wasn't shared after this. So they dropped the DMCA, which basically, what's interesting about DMCAs is people think once you drop a DMCA, you have to comply, and that companies are legally obligated to comply. They are, but here's what most companies leave out. They're legally obligated to reply to a DMCA and oblige taking it down so that they can receive safe harbor from future liability. That aspect is never mentioned, but there's a safe harbor in the legislation that if a company, whether or not they believe a piece violates any copyright, takes it down because somebody sent a DMCA, they will take it down to protect themselves. It's good business. So that's what happened here. The alternative aspect, the next step is for CryptoPunks, if they believe they weren't violating copyright, to then counter notice the DMCA. I don't know what happened after that kind of things. I think it went into litigation. I'm not really entirely sure, but it's unfortunate because it's not very clear. And this is where it gets fuzzy. It's not very clear which projects, like we have fast food punks, which are basically the punks as is with a McDonald's or a Burger King or a KFC hat. And that's all that's changed is they've put a hat on the punks.
Well, wouldn't McDonald's punks be beholden to McDonald's and Burger King's trademarks?
No, I think because of parody law.
Okay.
It's clear they're parodying the bear market fast food meme.
It's like Nathan Fielder doing a dumb Starbucks gag. Do
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about?
I is he the guy who opened up his own Starbucks shop? That wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He opened up a parody shop of
Yeah.
Starbucks called Dumb Starbucks
Yeah.
for his show, Nathan For You. And so
Yeah.
I see he didn't technically violate any laws, even though he had to close down the shop.
Yeah. I don't know. He may have been hit with some sort of, litigation after, or whatever, but you never know. So I'm still waiting for the follow-up with Cryptopunks, what's going on there, but I don't know. It could be the way in which they communicated or didn't communicate or antagonized Larva Labs that led to this, because it seems to me that Larva Labs isn't necessarily consistent in who they will and won't drop a DMCA on, and that's unfortunate because it's not very clear even to the owners of CryptoPunks what they can and can't do with their punks.
What about the owners of CryptoPunks? The people who spent money on those mirrored images with the different colored borders.
Yeah, I'm one of those. Yeah.
When CryptoPunks got DMCA'd, what then happens to your asset?
Yeah. So remember, this is on the blockchain, right? So just because it's not accessible on OpenSea, which is where Larva Labs sent the DMCA, doesn't mean it's not accessible on other platforms. So for a while it was accessible on Rarible, and I'm sure even though Rarible didn't publicize this, either Rarible took leadership from OpenSea or they were also sent to DMCA. Last I checked, you can buy and sell on Cargo, but I'm not entirely sure. I wasn't going to sell mine anyway. So there are ways, and also you can still interact through Etherscan with the contract. So you're not. This is where NFTs and regulation are going to get really interesting, because while platforms are beholden to U.S. companies like OpenSea and like Rarible are beholden to U.S. copyright law and the policies and procedures that are held within that. But the blockchain itself isn't, right? Nobody owns the Ethereum blockchain, so they can't DMCA the Ethereum blockchain because there's nobody there to like shut down a specific block.
Yeah, so it would be the same kind of way that they're approaching shutting down different coins, which is through the gatekeeper of the exchanges or the marketplaces in which they're sold.
It's why they're trying to regulate DEXs, right? Because they'll regulate the on and off ramps to that access. And they'll continue to do that.
Only if you reside in the United States, or maybe some other jurisdictions that's not as friendly to DEXs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So does the fact that the major NFT marketplaces having taken down CryptoPunks devalue your asset in any way?
No, I don't think so. I think it adds to its story. In fact, the value
and rarity.
It does. Accessibility, right, is an issue. The less access you have to friendlier UIs or even marketplaces that you're aware of or are comfortable using, the less tradability there is, the less access to the community that wants these there is. I think the hope is that they'll just fade by the wayside. My hope is that they'll continue to be rediscovered over time as new platforms pop up. In 20 years, I don't think we're going to see the same platforms that are still here. Just like in Web 1 and Web 2, who started it didn't end it, right? And I think the same thing will happen here. Maybe OpenSea will last, maybe Rarible won't, maybe Super Rare won't, maybe Known Origin won't. I don't know, but we're so early in this. We're only 3 years into my experience in the space, and we're basically 6 months into massive media hype, where there's only about 40,000 monthly active wallets. And think about people who have multiple wallets. So maybe we're talking about 15 or 20,000 monthly active people in the space. So it's a very small market right now.
Hmm. Yeah, I think what we are going to see, if I'm going to use history to predict the future, is that, maybe we can have another 1 year of a spike in interest. And then inevitably, these things kind of fade and then they resurge again in a different era. So, again, in the 90s, when I was a kid, I would collect Beanie Babies and
Mm-hmm.
like NBA cards and Pokemon cards, and the rarer, the more expensive. But that kind of died down. I would say those are the original NFTs, right? Beanie Babies kind of created that little niche.
Yeah, well, before that, sports cards, right?
Yeah,
So I mean, they've
stamps.
stamps. I mean, all collectibles. I've been saying this for a while, but we're nearly everything is an NFT conceptually.
When this thing dies down, what do you think will happen to the clout?
Mm-hmm.
Like, will it ever die down? Because
Yeah,
like Beanie Babies have died down, but in its heyday, one super rare Beanie Baby would go for tens of thousands, which is the driving force behind why people like myself wanted to collect
yeah.
these little guys. So when Justin Sun, who bought in at, let's say we're in the peak of the hype right now for $500,000 per rock,
Mm-hmm.
like, do you think that in 1 to 2 years from now, it's not going to be anywhere near as valuable? Or
Well,
is it still
let's.
going to hold its value like traditional, like oil painting in museums kind of thing?
I think we need to have a micro macro perspective. Micro, not all of these projects are going to maintain their value. I would say about 90 to 95% of them are not going to maintain their value. Same thing with websites that were created in the 90s and apps that were created in the 2000s. Remember when iPhone app developers were developing all kinds of ridiculous apps? Most of them weren't around anymore. They're not around. We're going to see the same thing here, especially with those profile picture projects. I think they're the most at risk if you're not already, if you're a smaller project. I think the creators of those projects know that they're driving in on the hype and they're just trying to make a buck. Personally, like there are outfits that are creating multiple projects a week based on basically a template, and they're just dropping them, boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
right? And they're making 140,000 per. It's not a lot of money. It's not like it's not. I shouldn't say it's not a lot of money. But if you do that over 10 projects, well, that's 1.4 million. And who cares if that project flops now, because we made our nut, right? So I think in the long term, NFTs are here to stay. NFTs and their utility will continue to grow. We're going to see them move into real estate. We're going to see it move into all kinds of aspects of our life. The technology is here forever, just like the internet, right? When that came out, just like Web 1, Web 2, like it is here forever. But 90% of these things that are happening right now, 95, they're not going to be around. Maybe even in the next 6 to 12 months, I see about 90% of them, we're going to see a significant drop in the market. Blue chip stuff will stay. Blue chip stuff will still sell, but not at a fever rate like it is, but it will maintain its value. So to answer your question, a punk will maintain its value. An Ether Rock will probably maintain its value, but it probably won't be able to sell as quickly.
Got it. I like to draw this parallel to the 2017 ICO boom,
Mm-hmm.
which is, again, similar thing is happening. There's this race of trying to sell your ICO, and everyone is getting in on this hype and launching their own coin. But after the bear market kind of takes over, then 95% of those are effectively dead.
Yeah.
But then there are those blue chip ones that emerge over time, and then you realize, okay, these are the ones that are inherently valuable because of X, Y, and Z reason, and these are the ones that are categorically blue chip.
Yeah, and we've in the NFT space, we've already seen one crypto winter.
Which is
or
what, like 2018, 2019?
No, like it was mid to late 2020, right before Beeple came in, and then after Beeple came in, we saw a significant dip in the market. So who was only selling were blue chip artists, and this is before Bored Apes and before Ether Rocks is discovered and before Mooncats is discovered, before all these, historical projects had been discovered. What people were buying was art, right? Art from artists mostly, and CryptoPunks, and maybe some Avastars. And there were, that's the ecosystem was kind of small in terms of what kind of projects people were getting invested in. They were mostly investing in people. And we saw the rise of Xcopy, we saw the rise of Coldy, we saw the rise of Trevor Jones and Matt Cain and Ferocious. And then we saw a dip in the market, and everybody was initially making sales because people were investing in artists. And then we see a dip in the market. We see almost my sales almost dried up, and blue chips were being sold, but they were being sold at a slower pace. And then from that, we saw in late February, early January 21, February 21, we saw like crazy record sales of CryptoPunks. And then that drove the alt punks market, which then drove the new, what I call the new avatar renaissance. So Bored Apes, which came out in April, and now we've just been driving ever since, up this hill with little dips here and there. But it's a winter's coming. But we've been through it, but but it was before all the mainstream media hype.
From what I'm hearing from you, there seems to be a coming of Christ moment where this Christ analog here is Beeple. So there's before Beeple and after Beeple.
I think that's how people have defined the space. There are some people out there who they're like, oh, Beeple's an OG artist. And I remember thinking to myself, like, no, that's just not true. He was really the first mainstream media success for us, and really brought a lot of awareness into the space when he dropped in, I think it was August of 20, his first one.
Right. And a conversation about NFT is really not complete and total without talking about Beeple. So how was it that he came in and sort of drove NFT summer and gave it its second windfall, basically? Why was it Beeple that everyone converged around?
I think a lot of that had to do with Nifty Gateway. Nifty Gateway is a marketing machine. And at the time they were new, and they had they were one of the newer platforms, but they had something that most of the NFT platforms didn't have. They had credit card onboarding.
Oh, okay.
So now you're talking about giving NFT access to anybody who wants to get into the space but doesn't want to, right? It's about the barrier to entry. They closed the barrier to entry. They made it accessible for those who don't want to think about cryptocurrency to buy and get in on this phase.
And why didn't other NFT markets follow suit?
I think it has more to do with decentralized. I can't speak for them specifically, but conceptually, I think it goes back to the idea of decentralization. Had Super Rare done that, they would have received a significant amount of backlash. Had OpenSea done that, probably would have seen a significant amount of backlash from the community, because they had been built up by crypto natives. Nifty Gateway wasn't built up by crypto art natives. It was built up by influence. It's backed by Gemini. You're talking about the Winklevi twins, right? And then the Koch Foster twins. Privileged people who come from privileged background who have access to privileged communities. And nothing against any of that, but that's, all that access they have helped drive their success and get into a market that maybe Super Rare and OpenSea didn't have access to at the time. There weren't VCs in the space yet to the
Makes
extent
sense, yeah.
to the extent that they are now, right? Andreessen Horowitz is like making a killing out here right now. They weren't around when people, I shouldn't say they weren't around. They weren't making the kinds of press releases they are now with their investments in OpenSea or Super Rare or things like that when people first came around in August and then dropped, I think, big in October on Nifty Gateway.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Nifty Gateway sort of had the Coinbase and Gemini regulatory compliance benefit that they had an advantage over other crypto natives.
Sure, and that's probably the reason that they went totally
gangbusters.
Yeah, yeah, and they're so already, yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't even know where I was going with that. I get frustrated because I remember those time when you're struggling to find your footing in the space and you see like these people, any people just come in without having done their work. It seems like having done their work.
Yeah.
You can get a little bit jealous, and that did happen to me, and
Yeah.
I had a bad taste in my mouth a long time for Nifty Gateway. But one of the dudes that heads up the artist, Tommy Kimmelman, he heads up all the bringing on all the artists there. He's like, I would consider him the head of product, and he's the best. Love Tommy and have a good relationship with him now. And I probably never will go on their platform for personal reasons, but I love the dude that's running it.
Totally. I get how you feel, although at the same time, I understand that they come from a different world in which they've built up a huge and influential network. And
Totally.
So when they enter into your world, they kind of bring that with them.
Yeah.
And, good or bad, they kind of grow the network for the entire crypto pie.
Totally.
So
And I see that now, right? But at the time, I was totally blinded by my own insecurity and jealousy, right? And I could freely admit that. And but also what's interesting about that too is though they already had a pre-existing crypto audience. So it was easy for them to get buy-in from their pre-existing audience, which is why I think they were also very successful. But when you see somebody like Snoop Dogg came in with his first drop and it didn't go very well, and that's because they're not marketing to their audience who may not be primarily crypto. And so you see these mistakes that happen as well. So when I look back now, it's like, of course it was going to work because look who their target audience was. It was everybody we want to be investing in us as artists, right?
This is a really good place to stop. I think we've covered a lot in this episode. So thank you so much, Eric, for coming on and lending your insights to us. This was incredible, and I had a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
I had a lot of fun too.
Me too.
Thank you, Chango.